on that note, I'll ask Rabbi Shilowitz to, unmute himself and answer some of the questions that I'll be posing to him. Or Rabbi, do you prefer that because you could read the Q&A box?
Yeah. Well, we'll try to do a blend of both. I wanted to give a little bit of halachic structure, but first I want to just respond to one question that was posted, which is the sensitivity or insight. Is it insightful to pray and plan for the rebuilding of the temple when there are a billion Muslims who might be offended by it? I think 100%. That's a very important thing to be sensitive about, and I think, basically, it's actually the mosque has been there for as much time as I think both temples stood together. So I think just to dismiss it is really inappropriate. I think that we can daven for a rebuilding is much different without an actual plan of how we're going to remove the mosque, but to daven in the abstract that God should return our temple in whatever form He will decide to bring it back is always been our aspiration since before the mosque, the dome was there, and I don't really feel that we shouldn't be able to hope for that. But I think that when you talk about an actual plan, I think it is very insightful and very misplaced, and I don't think that we should really have plans to first of all stir the status quo, and secondly to offend a billion people who have been there for many years, as if to dismiss it 100%. What I'd like to do is try my best in just a few minutes to explain, I think, one of the most important halachic principles that might be able to inform a lot of Pesach preparation and understanding what to do to prepare and why we do what we do. And that is really all about one word, which is bitul, nullification. The word bitul we're familiar with from the bitul chametz, the proclamation that we say before on Erev Pesach and the night of B'dikat Chametz, where we say, all the chametz in my possession is nothing to me. Which means to say that if there's some chametz, maybe I have a bagel that I left in my pocket somewhere or whatever, any chametz that I still possess is, in my mind, it's a psychological and emotional proclamation. In my mind, this chametz means nothing to me. And the halacha is that when you say that, at least d'oraita, you don't own chametz because you've put it out of your mind, and you've mentally and emotionally decided that you don't value it anymore. Bitul also has a physical quality, which means that if you have crumbs in your house, they are batel without you saying that. They are objectively insignificant. And they're completely irrelevant, and there's no requirement to look for them. So it's important to understand that when you clean your house for chametz, what you're looking for is a box of cereal, a container of noodles or bread or something in your freezer. The mitzvah is not to get rid of every crumb and dust of chametz, because that's really objectively batel. The mitzvah is to get rid of actual chametz. And bitul also has another meaning in general, which is something that we shouldn't have could be batel in a mixture. So we know that if milk falls into meat, or meat falls into milk, or non-kosher falls into kosher, so you have the idea of batel b'shishim, that when something is less than 1/60th and you don't taste it, it's as if it's not there. And that's a very important principle, that something that is forbidden could be batel as 1/60 or whatever ratio it might be. So actually, the way that you kosher something, we call it koshering, is that basically you take, let's say, a fork, which is chametz, and you put it into a pot of boiling water. Whatever chametz might have been absorbed in that fork will come out of the fork, and dissipate in the water and could be batel, and now everything's kosher. So that's bitul. Now, there's another aspect to bitul, which is that if you have a fork which you use for chametz, or a fork that you use for dairy and now you use it for meat, what's the problem? That the milk that was absorbed in the fork will now come out of the fork and go into the meat and make it not kosher milk and meat. So there's a very, very, very important principle of Jewish law, which is that if something was absorbed more than 24 hours ago into something like a fork, whatever taste that will ever come out of that fork in the future is not going to be positive. If anything comes out, it won't contribute positively to your food. You can imagine if you have a fork that you made, that you stirred your noodles with and cheese a week ago, and now you put it into the meatballs. If the meatballs have any taste of the milk that came from that fork, it's not going to actually make the meatballs better. So this is called notain tam lefgam, and it's automatically batel. So something could be batel by virtue of being in a very small proportion, or by virtue of the fact that it doesn't contribute positively. So if you have a fork which you're trying to make kosher for Pesach, and you put it into a pot of boiling water, even if you don't have a ratio of 60-1, if you haven't used that fork for 24 hours, it's going to be notain tam lefgam, and it will be permitted. And for this reason, almost everything that we kosher, you're always going to be told, don't use it for 24 hours. When you haven't used something for 24 hours, it will automatically be batel when you kosher it in the pot of boiling water, or you don't use your sink for 24 hours, and then you pour boiling water over the sink. Whatever was chametz was absorbed in that sink will dissolve in the water, and it will be notain tam lefgam. It will be negative, and it will be batel. So all of koshering is really based on the idea of bitul, and therefore, that's how koshering works. You don't use your sink for 24 hours, you pour water over it. You don't use your counter for 24 hours, you pour water over it. You don't use your silverware for 24 hours, and you put it into a pot of boiling water. You don't use it for 24 hours. Now it all becomes koshered. An oven also. The only exception is a self-cleaning oven, which is so hot that everything is automatically burnt, even if you didn't wait 24 hours prior. So here's the thing. The big stringency of Pesach is that once Pesach starts, nothing could be batel. Batel, chametz is so strict that even 1 in 1,000 is a problem, and even if it's unused for 24 hours, there's never bitul on Pesach. And that's why we treat Pesach so strictly and severely, and that's why we can't kosher something on Pesach, because there's no bitul on Pesach. That's how you kosher beforehand. And just once again, when you're cleaning, you're looking for things that are not batel, but are actually functional. With the few minutes that remain, just want to, well, Matthew, do you have any questions, or?
I'm just not sure. Maybe I didn't hear it, but when you pour the water over the surfaces that need to be koshered, does that water need to be boiling as well?
Yeah, all koshering, actually all trafing and all koshering has to be with boiling hot water. Something only becomes trafe if the hot water enables it to absorb, and all the koshering occurs by having boiling hot water that will pull it back out.
So we have a question here that addresses the fact that for many people, people are relying on a lot of kulas, leniencies this Pesach due to many of the circumstances that are involved. So the question was, and if I'm going to broaden the question a bit, is that does that mean that there are certain areas where we should be more machmir and be more stringent on, because in like the greater holistic picture, we feel like we're being a little bit too makel or lenient in certain areas, or the relationship with that doesn't play into each other like that?
I think that's a great point. I think that, first of all, I think there's a number of areas where we should be extra stringent. Um, uh, I have a few ideas come to mind. Firstly, the mitzvah of pikuach nefesh, the mitzvah to preserve life. A lot of people think that, wow, these rabbis, they're so lenient and they are so flexible with halacha that they canceled shul in order to, because of the virus. It's really the opposite. It's because we're so strict about the mitzvah of pikuach nefesh that we're doing all the things that we do, and it's really should be done with a religious imperative and not just like a leniency. It's really a mitzvah to be strict about. Secondly, I think that, you know, it's a mitzvah to be happy on the holiday. And I think we should really, you know, usually if you're working or you're in school up until Erev Pesach, you're happy because you have a break and you have a vacation and you're with your family and it's nice. This year it might be a little harder to be happy. And I think we really need to get ourselves in a good mood. And I think we also should be strict about the meaning of the Seder and the meaning of everything that we're doing and the davening. And I find that davening, you know, I'm pretty much a shul guy, I would say. I usually daven in shul when, you know, we don't have this situation. But davening at home is an opportunity to focus more, go at your own pace. It takes to be quicker to daven, obviously, without a minyan, and there's no Kriyat Torah, there's no Kaddish. But you can also go slower through what you're saying and to take some of the time that we have maybe this week and to really, maybe we can prepare better for the Seder than we usually do. Because maybe we do have the time for it and we can really make it more meaningful, even if it's compromised in other ways. And the last thing I would say about my last stringency is that it's appropriate to make certain compromises for the situation, but I think that we should really be honest with ourselves and not be lenient about things that they don't need leniencies. And in some ways, this crisis has become worse maybe than anticipated, but in some ways, not as bad. And we do have a lot of the ability to do a lot of the things the right way. So we shouldn't fall into the trap and saying, oh, this year, you know, Pesach 2020, we don't have to do all those things. But maybe there are things that we can do even better and look into ourselves and our own situation and see what we actually are able to do fully. And maybe our B'dikat Chametz can even be longer than usual.
A question that's come up a bunch is for a bunch of people who had to either leave their college dormitories or moved out of their apartments where they live and moved back home to their parents. How exactly should they go about doing B'dikat Chametz? And let's say, assuming you haven't done B'dikat Chametz yet, and you are now at your parents' home, do I now have a requirement to go back to my, you know, apartment or college dormitory to do B'dikat Chametz now, or is there any way that, or do I not have to do that?
Okay, you have a couple of options there. I mean, first of all, is your college dorm open or closed? Is like one question, obviously. If it's closed, you really can't go back. If it's closed and you know you have chametz there, you should definitely sell the chametz, include it in your sale, and then not do b'dikat chametz in your dorm, and do b'dikat chametz wherever you are now. If you do have access and it's accessible, I guess there is a benefit to going if it's safe to go. But I think that you can also just sell the chametz that's in your dorm or your apartment and do the bedika where you are now. I mean, if you don't think you have any chametz there, you can also just do bitul chametz and say whatever's there is nothing to me. You know, there's this interesting line in the Talmud that says that if there's a chametz that you know it's there, but a building falls on it and it's covered and you can't access it, you just say I'm mevatel it and that's it. You don't have to do anything because no one's going to get to it on Pesach. So here also, where your dorm is inaccessible, you just say bitul and that's enough. But I think the best idea is to include it in your sale and then do the bedika at home.
Does anyone have any other questions they want to ask in the question and answer box below? seems as though
Thank you.
there are no more questions.
All right, I'm glad we answered everyone's questions, and I want to just thank you all for participating. It's very unusual to be able to speak and to not see who you're talking to, but it was a pleasure to speak to you and learn with you, and I hope some of these reflections will help both your technical observance of the holiday and also the spiritual observance and the attitude that we can bring to this very unique Pesach, which is unlike any Pesach in our past and hopefully unlike any Pesach in our future.
Thank you, Rabbi Shaiwitz, for your very inspiring and very informative words. And Matthew Gross, thank you for also giving us so much to think about. We will look forward to continuing these kinds of dialogues and opportunities for Torah learning and for generally talking about all aspects of knowledge and understanding things to a much greater level in the coming days as we get ready for Pesach and even during Chol HaMoed. Those of you who have joined us for other ones of our talks, please, you know the quality of what we're doing. Please continue to be with us. And there'll be a recording of this evening that will be sent out as well so that you can share it with your family and friends. Once again, we wish everybody a good night and a Chag Kasher V'Sameach.